dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be? Hello, neighbor. If you want to evaluate your spiritual growth, if you want to evaluate how you're doing as a Christ follower, ask yourself 2 questions. Do I love God? And do I love my neighbor? We prefer to think about people in general terms, don't we? We like to think of the word neighbor as just anybody in the entire scope of humanity. And I think we like those general terms because it's easier to ignore people when we can't picture their face. It's easier to ignore people when we don't know their names. It's easier to ignore people when we think that they're just somewhere out there instead of being somewhere close. But what if when Jesus said, love your neighbor, he wasn't referring to a theoretical homeless man who you might pass by on the street? What if when Jesus said, love your neighbor, he wasn't referring to that random coworker who you might run into in the break room? What if Jesus was referring to somebody who is already consistently in your life? A neighbor whose face you can picture, maybe a neighbor whose name you already know. Maybe he was referring to someone who eats, sleeps, and lives just mere feet from where you eat, sleep, and live every single day. What if when Jesus said neighbor, he actually meant your next door neighbor? I don't think we have an evangelistic problem. I think what we have is a social problem. I think that's our problem. We know Jesus, we just don't know our neighbors. That's our problem. We've built this society where we pull into our garages so we never have to interact with people. The door goes up, we pull in, the door goes down. When it's time to go to work, the door goes up, we drive away, and we're never face to face. The problem is that not just our garages, but we put up these privacy fences to block our play and our recreation from other people in their backyards. The problem is we create these self-checkout lanes for speed, but is it really for speed, or is it really that we don't want to interact with people? We've created this society where we just don't know how to talk to people. So I don't think that it's that we don't know how to talk about Jesus. I think our problem is we just don't know how to talk to people. Just say hello to them. I'm not asking you to preach the gospel, all right? This week I'm not asking you to say that Jesus Christ loves you so much that he died for your sins, and would you like to be baptized right now? That's not what I'm asking you to do. Don't preach. Don't go be a preacher. Go be a neighbor. I think Jesus looks us in the eye as a Harvester Christian Church, people sitting right here, and he's looking us in the eye and saying, I'm commanding you to go be a neighbor. Now, we like to focus on the Great Commission about, didn't Jesus command us to go make disciples of all nations? Isn't that what we're supposed to go to do? You know what he said well before he said go make disciples? He said go be a neighbor. And he made that a command. And so church, before you go make disciples, before we go into Journey to Bethlehem season, before you invite someone to Christmas Eve services, before you begin to talk about the gospel, and we want to do that, and we're going to do that, and we're going to help you figure out how to do that. Before we do any of that, though, maybe we just need to go be a neighbor. Before we go into the world, and before we go into mission trips, and before we go into Journey to Bethlehem, just start by walking outside and saying, hello, neighbor, to someone around you. We have big dreams for what God has in plan for St. Charles County, for St. Louis, for Ethiopia, for Nicaragua, for Haiti, for all these places in the world. We have big plans, and I think God has big plans for the glory of Jesus Christ's name in those places. But I think that might be step 2 or step 3 or step 4. Let's not forget step 1. And step 1 is us just going outside to the people who live right next to us and saying 2 simple phrases. Hello, neighbor.